If you had just 6 weeks to get jacked and lean and with an impressive enough physique to turn heads on the beach or at the pool, what would you do? Well, I'll tell you what I would do. And before I do that, let me introduce myself. My name is Alex Salkin, or as my friends and followers like to call me, the Hebrew Hammer. I have been personal training in some level or another since October of 2010. So that will make it my sweet 16 this year. And in that time, I have made my specialty kettlebells, calisthenics, and natural human movement, as well as filling in some of the gaps with a little bit of old school bodybuilding and a little true grit as well. And a couple of the things that I have found along the way is that many of the answers to the questions that you seek to have answered are already well within you to do. You simply need to arrange them in a way that is going to allow you to achieve what you would like to achieve. Now, it needs to be said that 6 weeks is enough time to make some changes. It's not enough to completely transform yourself in most cases. So I would, number one, have to say that let's say you were to take on my suggestions for the next 6 weeks, you should make it your priority to set in stone some good habits that make this sort of total transformation in just 6 weeks a little bit less likely to be necessary in the future. But that aside, we can talk about that on another episode. There are a few things that I would recommend. And what I want to start off with is talking about some of the more generalities. So, for instance, move every single day. If you want to get good at a skill, let's say it's playing guitar, like my buddy Pat Flynn. He practices very, very regularly and is a sensational guitar player. And he's not doing it like let's say 2 days a week and just playing for 2 or 3 hours at a time. He's doing a little bit every day, throughout the day, whenever he can. And if you treat your movement the same way, whether it's something as simple as just parking a little further away before you get your groceries, or taking the stairs instead of always taking the elevator or the escalator, or of course, actually just doing standard exercise sessions. Any excuse you can find to move is going to be very, very helpful. Um, Now, that does not mean that you have to move hard every single day, but I think 7 days a week of movement is perfectly reasonable. You can have, for instance, 3 days where you do traditional training, 2 days where you do maybe some in between type of stuff, and it could be cardio, it could be just some other exercises that you would like to get done, and then you could have 2 days off. It's always a good idea to have some days off, but that doesn't mean you can't walk, and I think walking and other things like that are excellent. Now, my personal opinion, if you want to do the 6 weeks to totally transform yourself, your daily movement should be 3 days of traditional exercise. Ideally, 5 days of something like loaded gait pattern work, and that you don't have to go crazy with it, but I'll explain why it's useful in just a little bit. And then again, 2 days off, something like that. So, to give you a little bit more of an idea of a framework, that is what I would do. And when I say traditional exercise, I don't mean like bike riding, although that's great, particularly strength training. So compound exercises, presses, pulls, squats, hinging movements, things of that nature is what I would go to. Up next would be protein at every meal. And this is for a couple of reasons. Now, you don't need like an excessive amount of protein. There's kind of like an assumption that uh, you just need like a ton and just tons and tons of it. The reality is that anywhere between maybe like zero point 0.7 to 1 gram, 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight is probably going to do the trick. Any more than that, probably don't really need. And you can start focusing on other things like, a decent amount of fats, carbs. Yes, you do need both of those things for your health as well as your performance in most cases, and fruits, vegetables, things like that. Notice I didn't mention anything about supplements, didn't say anything about some fancy fad diet. Ideally, you want to eat in a way that you can sustain over a long period of time. It might be necessary for 6 weeks to, be a little bit more concerned with what you're eating. I don't think supplements are going to be that big of a deal. You can add them if you want, but it rarely is it the sort of a thing that, at least from my experience, does all that much to move the needle the way that the big stuff does. All right. Now, again, for protein, 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight or lean body weight maybe if you're very overweight, um, per pound for body weight that might be a little excessive, but let's say lean body weight should do the trick. Now, the other thing that I'm going to recommend is that you should focus more on muscle building than strength. Now, strength training is still useful, and I want to qualify what I mean by this. If you take a weight that, let's say, you do a body weight exercise that you could maybe do for 10 reps, but not 11, like 10 is your absolute max. Strength training would be doing, let's say, anywhere between 1 and 5 reps with that, so that you have plenty of energy left, so that you can do another couple of sets like this and get in a lot of practice. This makes your nervous system very efficient. But you're not trying to show off your nervous system at the beach. You're trying to show off your muscles. So if you want to train your muscles in such a way that they will grow and show, then you need to push a little harder. Now, the bad news obviously is that you're gonna have to suffer a little bit when you work up to your working sets, or the two, let's say 2 or 3 sets that you do that are going to be pushed really to the limit, or pretty close to it. Meaning, if we take that same 10 rep exercise just previously discussed, you're going to want to do like 8 to 9 reps of those. All right. And you don't do endless sets like this, but you want to push pretty hard, and that is going to spur new muscle growth. And again, you're going to have to be consistent with it, but it can be done. And over the course of 6 weeks, if you train consistently like that with a skeleton crew of movements that cover a lot of muscle, you'd be amazed at what you can accomplish even within just 6 weeks. Um, and I should mention, although you might feel like, maybe I should just go all the way till I can't do another rep, it's going to take a lot more out of you. So it's gonna be a lot harder to recover from. Lee Priest, who was a very famous bodybuilder, said, "Stimulate, don't annihilate," and that's a good general rule. You want to push hard for sure, but you want to do it in such a way where you're not going to be negatively impacting your workout a few days later. So the next thing is, let's talk a little bit about leanness, because I would say, for a lot of people, even if you don't put on a lot of muscle but you lean out, you're just going to look better. And nowadays, it's just so common for people to hold a lot of extra body fat on their bodies that it's never been easier to look better. All you got to do is just be a little less fat than the next guy. And leaning out, not always very easy, because again, a lot of it, really, the majority of it comes down to diet. Um, Exercise does play a role for sure, but something like 60% of the calories that you're going to burn on a daily basis are going to come from what's called your basal metabolic rate, or just what your body needs to burn in order for you to function. All right. Movement makes up another, I think, maybe 10 or 15%. And then exercise is roughly, generally around maybe like 5% of the calories that you're going to burn. Um, and so the big thing I would say is diet. Make sure that you're eating whole foods, natural foods. Everybody knows what this means. I like to call this the gun to the head test. If somebody had a gun to your head and said, "What would a healthy diet look like?" They Anybody could tell you exactly what it would look like. Nobody is going to say, "Oh, you should buy, Cliff bars, or you should get a bunch of those granola bars that crumble when you open them up." Like, everybody knows that it's lean meats, it's fruits, vegetables, uh, just plants and animals, essentially. Pretty straightforward. You might need a little bit of insight given to you on the details, but that's about the extent of it. Sleep is also very, very important. And I number for a lot of different reasons. So I won't go into all of them now, but suffice it to say, if you don't recover well, you don't sleep well, your body has a tendency to crave stuff that, to eat that you might otherwise be able to resist. Like, it's likely going to want more, carb heavy stuff and sugar heavy stuff and that sort of a thing. So even just on a practical level, sleeping better is going to make it less likely that you're going to want to binge on things like that. But then the other thing too is that sleep is where the overwhelming majority of your recovery comes from. It's also when your deep REM sleep is when your body starts to make all the hormones that we want to keep high as we get older, stuff like testosterone and things like that. And all of these play a big role, or sleep plays a big role in all of these, rather. So, highly recommend that you do not skimp on it. Um, I do have I have an idea to put together some information on stuff to do to improve your sleep, because it is very difficult nowadays with, you know, uh, well, let's just say, like, artificial light and then constant doom scrolling and stuff like this. So, uh, for now, just keep in mind that sleep is important, and you can think about the details a little bit later. But again, in most cases, you probably know what you need to do to sleep better, at least to make it a little bit better from where you are now. Now, I will say this on the training side, there are some interesting things that seem to work very well for people, and I don't know why more people aren't talking about it. Like just this morning, I was reading a segment of the book "The Purposeful Primitive" by Marty Gallagher, which is a really, really good book. And he was talking a bit about how, as a beginner, you can expect to both build muscle and lose fat in your training. And although that's true, I don't think it's limited just to beginners. I think if you're doing it intelligently, it's still feasible to do it, even if you're already at like an intermediate stage. You might say, like at an advanced stage, let's say you want to build muscle and you're going to need a pretty decent calorie surplus. May not be as easy to cut body fat at the same time, but suffice it to say that very often people seem to think those two things are at odds, and they do not have to be. And a couple of ideas here come to mind. Now, one of them, just from the experience of my own experience as well as those of my students and people who've done a variety of my programs, courses, challenges, things like that. Loaded gait pattern work, meaning gait pattern being like your walking pattern, really works wonders at getting people leaner. So one example from my own students, two of whom have actually been guests on the show. One of whom is Dr. Judson Korn, who's an ER doctor. Well, in his case, it was more like a strength that he noticed he gained within about 14 days of doing my Crawl-A-Days challenge, which is something that I re-release every holiday season, hence Crawl-A-Days. He was able to do a one-arm push-up with no previous one-arm push-up practice whatsoever. Um, and similarly, and it's a 30-day routine. Similarly, Lena Everby, who I had as a guest on my show some years ago, a mom from Sweden and an enthusiastic kettlebell and bodyweight trainee, said that she lost enough body fat within 14-day period. Again, there's that number 14 again, where she was able to see her abs, and it was the first time in ages. And one other example, Malcolm McCowan, originally from Australia, now living in the United States, did the very first iteration of my Crawl-A-Days challenge back in like 2019, 2020 ish. Or no, I take that back, 2018, 2019. And similarly, like within 30 days, he could see his abs. And this was just crawling for 10 minutes a day. Now, there's a little bit more to it because that whole routine worked out so that you could progressively make your crawling more challenging within that 10 minutes. And then you'd also back off so that some days would be a little bit easier. So it wasn't just crawl 10 minutes a day. But seriously, if that's all you did, you could definitely expect to see a lot of body fat go away and a lot of the muscle that you already have being better exposed. Incidentally, just on that note, I do have a challenge called the 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge, which I'll include a link in the show notes here, but contains loaded gait pattern work with primarily with the focus on getting you stronger, but the nice side effect is also getting leaner. And it's not only crawling, it's a number of different things mixed together. But you can go to 9minutechallenge.com and you can get a free copy of that. It's a number 9minutechallenge.com. Be sure to check it out. Now, on the topic of loaded gait pattern work, another thing that I learned from the wise and powerful Matt Fury, who's also been a guest on the show in the past. He's the guy who wrote Combat Conditioning. He's really, I would say, like the spark that reignited the interest in calisthenics training back in very early 2000s with his book, Combat Conditioning. He's also wrestling champion, international kung fu champion, very, very smart, very strong guy. And he told a story about a Canadian farmer that he stumbled across and in some sort of an online fashion or another who chronicled his 60-day journey of just carrying a 40-pound dumbbell or kettlebell every day. And he would just do it for a few minutes at first. And then as that got easier, he would add another round of a few minutes, meaning he wasn't doing it nonstop. He would do for a few minutes, put the weight down, then do it again. And he worked his way up to 10 sets of these with just brief, couple minute walks with a kettlebell or a dumbbell, nothing fancy. But he dropped like 30 pounds, got super lean, I think like single digit body fat, and hit a PR in his pull-ups, hit a PR in his push-ups, And the guy was, I think, 60 years old. So this was not like a 30-year-old who was just, you know, full of all the stuff that allows you to just succeed wildly, you know. He did really, really spectacular work, and he was not carrying a lot of weight. And the guy, I think he started off weighing at like 185 pounds. So 40 pounds, if you weigh 185 pounds, is not a lot, but the impact was huge. And the last one that I will mention, this one is uh, really great. Another really great example. It's not pertaining to any like specific exercise you or I would be mostly familiar with, but it comes from Jamie Lewis. Yet again, he's been on my podcast a couple of times. Check out those episodes. Very smart guy, historian of all things strength, he's powerlifting champion, super strong. And he wrote about a few years ago. He had been working in, I think, an Amazon warehouse, and he wrote this. I'll read it off verbatim. He said most people used big wheeled carts to move the bins, so they let the bins pile up and loaded them lazily en masse. It created all sorts of log jams, was lazy, and left a lot of time for standing the F around, which I'm not into. So I would just clear 2 to 4 lines rather than just my personal line as quickly as possible. When I was feeling sort of lazy, I would push between 6 and 8 of those stacks at a time, which was a stupid and slow slog most of the goofy 20 somethings with whom I worked liked to do in an effort to demonstrate their great might or something. I instead pushed 3 or 4 stacks at a time, which couldn't have been more than 200 pounds. And Lewis could very easily deadlift 600 plus pounds, in his prime. So 200 pounds isn't much for him. He said I'd line them up and run them at a steady pace so that my pushing didn't cause me to strain and match the pace that I walked unloaded. Now here's the interesting part. He then goes on to say, doing that, fat fell off me so quickly it was scary, especially since I was eating pizza maybe 3 times a week and had run out of gear money, or run out of gear, which is a slang term for steroids, and money for gear a month prior. So a lot of times people have this idea that if you are big and muscular and lean, the only way to do that is with steroids. There's some truth to it. If you see somebody who's really, really big and also lean, uh, you know, that's it could be the case. But it's especially impressive that I think he goes on to talk about how he was not really eating super healthy, like lots of pizza and junk food. But because of this, again, loaded gait pattern work on a routine basis, done at, as he mentioned, not a lot of weight for him, he was able to just like burn fat like nobody's business. I don't quite know the mechanism behind why that works, but again, I'm going to insist loaded gait pattern work for getting really, really lean and supporting your strength because there's nothing more natural in terms of movement than your gait pattern. It's like the one thing that sets you apart as a creature on this earth is the human gait pattern. So keep this in mind. Loaded gait pattern work, along with proper diet and better sleep, are going to work wonders for helping you to get leaner. I would say, even with, and I don't encourage it, but even with a less than ideal diet and your sleep, maybe needing some work, it can still work to get you leaner. So keep this in mind. If you got to start with one thing, that would be the way to go. All right. Now, just to summarize, once again, if you want to get swole for summer, and you want to get swole by summer, imagine you got 6 weeks. Number one, move every day. All right. Uh, 3 days, you can do traditional training, and I would recommend focusing on compound strength and muscle building exercises. 5 days at a minimum of loaded gait pattern work, not such that you're completely psyching yourself out or crashing and burning, but nevertheless, you can push that a little harder than you might think. 2 days off, but still keep walking and keep moving those days. Protein at every meal, 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of lean body weight will get you taken care of. Fill the rest with quality sources of fats and carbs and the micronutrients that you get from, and vitamins that you get from fruits and vegetables and things of that nature. Focus on muscle building over traditional strength training. Muscle building requires that you push pretty close to your limits and that you don't do very many sets, whereas strength training requires that you avoid pushing to your limits and that you do a lot more sets. All right. So it's kind of like they're both very complementary to one another. Muscle building can also help you to build a great deal of strength. You just have to approach it a little bit differently. All right. Uh, don't fill up on ballistics. I actually didn't mention this one earlier, but although I do like kettlebell ballistics, I think You can do them in such a way, provided you're focusing on maybe on like power and explosiveness. I think those would be good. I do know of people who've done lots and lots of them, of course, lost a decent amount of weight. But I would be more inclined to recommend that for your leanness on the exercise side of things, you stick toward the more loaded gait pattern type of stuff, in addition to improving your diet and sleeping better. All right. So there you have it. Now, because I mentioned Swole by Summer, I do have a program coming out, a 6 week program called Swole by Summer that is going to dig into all of these different things, as well as give you a set in stone program for you to use, as well as tweak as necessary, so that when life happens, you're still going to be able to respond in kind, and you're going to be able to continue to forge ahead. Do not need to be perfect. It's going to show you more than anything how to get in the right direction, even when you got to make some twists and turns. But it's going to have, like I said, a program that's going to focus on a couple of things. One of them is going to be your movability, which is like I like to use it as a catch-all term for improved flexibility, improved mobility, improved coordination, things of this nature. It's going to focus on using brief strength sessions, meaning very brief, focuses on pure strength to help sort of amp up your nervous system's readiness to fire up its most precious gold, which is what's the high threshold motor units, which is the things that you want to target when you're building muscle, because this is where the greats end up going in order to get the building muscle very quickly. And then, of course, it's going to focus specifically on muscle building exercises, including a few avant garde ones that, even if you're a diehard kettlebell and calisthenics guy or gal, you probably haven't done a lot of, but would serve you very well. And naturally, there will be loaded gait pattern work specific to what you're going to be doing, or what you're going to need to be doing in order to be able to show everything that you've grown. Okay, so you get to show off the pecs and the lats and the glutes and the thighs, and people will be able to see it. It's not going to be hidden behind tons and tons of layers of flab. Again, this depends on where you're starting from. You can't expect to go from Woody Allen to Arnold Schwarzenegger in 6 weeks, but you can make some huge leaps and bounds and turn a couple of heads. Maybe get people thinking that you are on steroids yourself. Who knows? Okay, crazier things have happened. And there's going to be more information on that on my email list. You can very easily get on that by going to 9minutechallenge.com, getting your free copy of the 9-minute challenge. And within the next couple of days, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about it. And if you're hearing this, let's say weeks or months into the future, you can always ping me, reply to any of the emails that you get when you sign up to my list if you're interested in getting yourself a copy of Swole by Summer. And a good time will be had by all, or at least most. I'm sure that some people are going to be wailing and gnashing in their teeth, but I know that the majority of you, if you're listening to this, you probably like that sort of a thing. So by the end, you're going to be begging for more, because there's going to be plenty of gains that you can see still in your future, even after those 6 weeks are up. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this. And as always, have fun and happy training.